Hi everybody, my name is Ian Vair, and you're watching The Green Mountain Chef. We have a lovely winter recipe for you today. Comfort food is what I decided to go with. Over the holidays, we were indoors making all kinds of lovely soups and casseroles. Today's soup, I decided to throw a little different spin on it, something a bit less challenging for the viewer at home. For myself as a chef, culinary trained, frequently the soups that I am making are with a stock. And a stock tends to use bones. Shrimp shells if I'm making a seafood stock, chicken bones for a chicken stock, beef bones for a beef stock. Stocks are a lovely foundation for a delicious soup. Now, that said, they can take much longer than, for instance, a broth. What's the difference? Well, a stock, again, is made with bones. Bones need much longer to cook to release their flavor. What's the difference with a broth? A broth, all you simply need to use is the meat. Today's soup, we're going to be making a beef, vegetable, and wild mushroom soup. It's only going to take us about an hour. Now, how are we going to do that in an hour? We only have 30 minutes on the show. Well, I have a few television secrets that I can't let on to. A couple things that I've prepped to begin with. But I'm going to allude to you how to do this at home within an hour. And it's very simple compared to a lot of soups that you'll see other chefs creating or something that you might find on the internet. So the first thing I want to talk about is this broth. It takes about an hour. So I was at the store today. I found a nice cut of meat, a New York strip. Most of us know what that is. Now this New York strip, I happened to cut the strip off of it. The fat cut right off. And when I did that, I literally pulled it right up, laid it right down on the cutting board, took the strip right off. Okay? Now, what's next? After that, I cut that strip of fat into pieces, sections, as small as I could, and then browned them in my saute pan. I want that brownage, I want that flavor, that caramelization. That is the first bit of meat that went into my stock. Now, my stock's over here to the side. I have started with about 6 cups. 6 cups of water. Brought that to a boil. Ultimately, it's going to simmer down to about a quart. So a quart is what we're looking for in the end. But I started with 6 cups, brought it to a boil, reduced it to a simmer, and I took those chunks of fat and meat that I had browned, put them right into my broth. What's next? Well, just like a stock, we need vegetables. What vegetables are we going to use? We always need onions and carrots, frequently celery, and garlic. Today I opted against the celery. I'm not using it in my soup as one of my finished vegetables. I just decided to leave it out. I actually practiced with this soup last night. It was fabulous. So we didn't need we didn't need the celery. I just decided to leave it out. So what we're going to do with the onions, and I just started to do right here, we're going to cut the top side right off, all right, so that we have a flat surface. Now this you might think is trash, but this is excellent to go right into your stock. What we're going to do next, from the root side down, is slice the onion in half and then peel our skin off. That outside skin, again, is excellent for our stock. Now, if ever you get into your onion and you see a little bit of it is not quite as healthy on the inside, sometimes that happens. You never know. It is the winter time. We don't always get the freshest vegetables. I'm not happy with that. I'm just going to throw that away. Most of this onion looks fabulous, though. So this skin is going to go right into my stock. Now, what I'm going to do next, slice right down the center and then right across. Now with the stock, they don't have to be perfect slices. It doesn't have to be perfect dices. We just want to break it down. The oil I elected to use today is the sesame oil. I wanted a little bit of an Asian hint in today's soup. Sesame oil has a pretty high smoke point on it as well, so the vegetables are going to get pretty hot and caramelized. Nice sizzle into this pan. Now, if you're wondering why I'm going to be doing this to the veggies, that caramelization, very important. That's flavor, especially when we're making something quick, like a broth. You want to get as much flavor packed into that as possible. All right, so these onions are caramelizing. I've got another onion that I want to demo again that I'm going to use for the soup. And the pieces that I put in before, the skin from the outside, you might as well use right in your broth. In general, the spec with French cooking for a stock or a broth per gallon is about 8 ounces by weight of that onion. Now, the other veggies that generally go into a stock or a broth, like I already said, are the carrots and celery and some garlic. Now, in general, we use about half the amount of carrots and then celery as onion. So the onion's a very important factor. Okay, I'm going to reserve this onion when we are making the final soup. All right, we're almost ready on this. It's caramelizing nicely. Meanwhile, at the very end, I'm going to add a little bit of rice. Now, rice can be delicate. I don't want to just dump it into the soup at the end. I want to cook that separately. And what's a little unique about this soup is many of the things, the vegetables that I'm putting into it in the end, I'm going to cook separately to the exact point to where they have the perfect texture. Make sure I don't overcook certain things and undercook other things. That makes sense. It will once you eat it. All right, so for the rice, I have 2 cups of water. I happen to be using brown rice today. 2 to 1. 2 cups of water simmering to 1 cup of brown rice. Now this takes about 40-45 minutes. So that won't be finished by the end of the show, but I already made some prior to us starting to tape the show to make sure that we had some to add in at the end. So that's a big part of this whole recipe, is sort of having everything ready, and then right at the end we mix it all together and it's delicious. Okay, so if we can see the onions here, we have some nice caramelization. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and peel my carrots. These peels are going to go right into the broth. These onions are going right into the broth. This is our flavor, folks. It's really important with soups that you make a nice stock or broth like we are today. It's also important that we don't hard boil it. We want to simmer it. It's a lower temperature, about 180 to maybe 200 degrees at the most. A boil is around 212. Okay, so same process with the carrots. I'm going to slice them thin. Make sure when you're using your knife, always keep your fingers tucked and your thumb back. Your fingers are really a guide. Some of you might say, wow, how does he use that big knife on camera? I'm just used to it. And the truth is a big sharp knife for me is the best tool that I can have in the kitchen. And the sharper the knife, the better tool I have. One thing we learned in culinary school is that the most dangerous knife in the kitchen is the dullest. Okay, so again, these carrots are just going to brown a little bit, and then right into the broth. check on my rice, make sure that that's not boiling too hard. I just want it to simmer, remember. Okay. That all looks good. Garlic. I'm a bit of a fan of garlic. So for you folks at home, this is something that you can omit. This is something you can use less of. This is something you can use more of. It kind of just depends on what you like. But when we use it, we're going to separate the cloves here. And what I like to do is just lean right down on it, and it sort of smashes it. A lot of people say they don't like working with garlic because it can be challenging. But the truth is, it's not too bad. Just give it a little smash. Loosens up the skin. Pulls apart. If you have a piece that's a little challenging, sometimes you'll need to cut the top of it off. I'll demo here. Just like so. And then the rest of it should come off pretty easily for you. Okay. Again, these skins are wonderful for your broth. Now, ultimately, we will be straining this. So none of these skins, none of this heavy caramelization is going to go into the soup at the end. Now, the caramelization that I'm doing with these vegetables for the broth, it's not a requirement, folks. It just makes for a tastier base for your soup. So if you're in a special hurry, you can omit that. All right, so the garlic, got it out of its skin. Slice that across. Go back over a few more times. You can also buy garlic already chopped in jars at the grocery store. As a chef, I thoroughly enjoy working with food, so this is all fun for me. All right, we're getting some caramelization here. And I got to keep the pace going, so we don't have quite as much as we had on the onions, but that's okay, folks. Remember, I've got a timer in front of me. I got to make sure I get all this done just right. Everyone at home can go at their own pace. Now, garlic we need to be careful with because it burns really easily. And I don't like the taste of burnt garlic. This is what is called sweating your garlic. And you just barely want to simmer. Or excuse me, saute. Just barely want to saute. We're not heavily browning it. We're just releasing some of that bite. That's it. All right, this looks great. I already have a bay leaf in here, a few peppercorns. Everything is in here that needs to be. If we had some celery, I could throw some celery in there. Not a requirement, like I already said. All right. Now, the broth is working. Let's start with our mise en place, as the French would say. All the ingredients, everything in its place. What I'm going to start with is this nice steak that I bought today. All I'm going to season it with, honestly, is just a little salt and pepper. In my younger days, I worked at several steakhouses, and it was kind of a big deal. You get a good steak that you don't over-season it. Frequently, it was salt and pepper. So that's what I'm going with today. I have some sea salt. Some crushed black pepper. My pan is getting nice and hot. halfway home. Now remember, I'm using sesame oil today. There's a lot of oils that could be used. Avocado is another one that I tend to use a lot at home. Canola oil is a fairly good oil to use. With olive oil, extra virgin olive oil especially, I tend to keep that one for dressings. Not a lot of cooking. It has a low smoke point. This I really want a high smoke point, okay, because it gives a strong caramelization. All right, now while this is going, let's see, let's break down an onion. So before with the stock, with the broth, I just cut the onion down the middle and then cut over again. With this, I'm going to be a little more delicate. If you remember, I cut the top side off, and then I'm going to set it down like so. Fingers on the top, okay? We need to keep this knife very level. We want to go through most of the way. You see that? And then out. And then I'm going to go, again, most of the way. I'm leaving this sort of a handle, if you will, on the end of the onion there. I'm going to cut right down. Okay? So through, across, and then across again. Some nice onions to work with. All right. Now working with the onions, there's a lot of ways that we could work with it. You don't have to dice it like that. If you wanted long slices of it, say like a French onion, same kind of deal. Just go across. This is your soup. I'm just guiding you through this, making this broth and adding your vegetables into it. And again, with these vegetables, these just happen to be the vegetables that I picked out today. This recipe doesn't have to be exact. What I recommend most is sticking with the foundation, the broth. All right. Notice as I'm using this broth as just almost a recycling bin for anything any trim that I happen to be, it's coming off of the onions or the carrots. And when I get into using broccoli and the squash, I'm not going to do that because they don't emit a strong flavor like the onions and carrots or celery or garlic, okay? So it's just a nice little recycling bin as a chef. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and flip this steak. We can see this. Notice we have some really, really nice brownish here. And what I'm going to do with this, I think I'm going to go ahead and take the top off also. I kind of like the size of this carrot. And I think I'm going to elect to have half moon slices in this soup. Okay? So all I did was peeled it, as you saw me do about 5 minutes ago. Cut it in half long ways. And then just slice right down. All right. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, let's put the carrots in. I'm trying to get a little color here, folks. You don't have to do any of this. The truth is we could throw all these veggies in just about at the end. But what this is doing is it's cooking it most of the way through. It's giving it more flavor. It's fun. Why not? Those of you who don't know me, my name is Chef Ian Vair. I have a small business locally here in Rutland called Green Mountain Fungi. And we work at the local farmers markets, Vermont Farmers Market and the Rutland Farmers Market, and we're real big on supporting local, using local ingredients, supporting other vendors, anywhere from vegetables to maple syrup to mushrooms, as much as we can, really. Cheeses if we can, local water for making teas, and it's a bit of a community. A lot of us vendors work together, and we don't see it like it's just our farmers market. It's for all of us. It's for the community. So those of you who don't know me, come down to market one of these days. You'll probably be able to hear me. But there's many of us that are down there. And usually there's depending on the day, anywhere from 30, could be up to 50 vendors that could really use more local support. Okay. So we've got a little bit of caramelization here. Just going to put these aside. Onions are going to go in next. Just a little more oil. So our broth is going. I've had this going for about an hour by now, so we're going to strain this off shortly. And an hour is start to finish about where you want to be with the broth. I think I'd already said that, but just so we know, I really want that point to come through in the end, because that is our foundation of flavor. Rice has got a little while to go, but again, that's something that I made in the beginning of the show. And the truth is you could use leftover rice, absolutely. I mean, maybe you had Chinese food last night and you got a big quart of white rice that you never use, and you say, what am I going to do with this? Well, this is a nice recipe to use that up maybe with some other vegetables that you have in the refrigerator. Okay, got some nice color, almost ready on those. I think next, let's use this yellow squash. And with this guy, I'm going to get a few slices of half moon, and then he fattens up a bit on me in the middle. So I'm going to quarter that ultimately. I also have a zucchini, and squash and zucchini they're very similar. So I'm going to cook them together. And I kind of like the size of the zucchini, so I'm just going to go with all half moons. All right. A little more oil. All right, next, this is a nice way to use up, in my opinion, the bottom of your broccoli. I like to cut the very bottom off that I don't use when I'm using the florets. And I'll just kind of quarter this. Nice way to use this up. Close. A little more garlic. Got a nice big clove on this one, so I'm just going to keep it down to one. This broth is going to go ahead and come off. And I have a little station set up for me back here with a colander, if you will, a strainer. So much going on at once. So take your time at home doing this, folks. Have fun. Don't rush it. And I'm literally going to put this broth right back in the same pot. All right. Carrots and onions are going right in. Zucchini and squash. Let's cook this broccoli. A little bit of garlic. And I kind of like the larger garlic for the actual soup. And just for fun, I grabbed some ginger today. And what I do with the ginger is I actually use a spoon. All right? And that peels almost perfectly right off. Ginger is one of those things that can be a little bit intimidating. But something as docile as a spoon can pull that skin right off. All right, most of that there. A little bit more. Just going to slice this up a bit. A little bit of a chop. Right into the soup. Broccoli's going in. "30 seconds on the garlic. Haven't put too much salt in, so I'm going on about 1/4 cup, maybe a little less. It's about 2 tablespoons soy sauce. All right. I have some maitake mushrooms. These are really, really interesting. Hen of the woods, many of us call them. Now these were frozen. These are from this season. And literally all that I'm going to do is just slice these right across. They're very meaty. About a cup of mushrooms here. I also have some black trumpet mushrooms. And these guys, they're already dried up and dehydrated, and literally all I'm going to do is just break them up into the soup. It's important when sautéing that you always have just enough oil, not too much. All right, now, this nice steak that I have here, slicing this a few times through, back across. It's about medium rare right now, almost rare actually. This is going to cook a little bit more right in the soup. Mushrooms go in. Let's trade this up. So this is literally going to cook for about 10 minutes. The last thing we're going to add in is about a cup of rice. Now, you might say, I like more rice than that in my soup. Add 2 cups. What's fun about this recipe is it can be altered. And what's fun about being the chef is I get to change things if I want to change them. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to put 2 cups in, guys. What the heck? Okay. We did it. Not easy on the air, I'll tell you what. So this is something start to finish, hour to an hour and a half is what I'm going to give everybody. All right? Most importantly, we're going to make that broth. The veggies that you see in here, they need a good 10 minutes to cook. But I'm going to go ahead and plate this up so we can see about how colorful it is and what it's going to look like at home. And these mushrooms are wonderful. These are mushrooms that are not to be trifled with. They're not something that you should think that you can find out in the wild yourself if you don't know anything about. I myself am a mushroomer. I get out and forage all the time in the summertime, and I preserve a lot of these. This is some of the kinds of products that I have with my business. Green Mountain Fungi. So here we are. Our beef, vegetable, and wild mushroom soup. It wasn't easy, but we did it. Thanks everybody for watching. My name's Ian Vair, and you're watching The Green Mountain Chef.